Hi YouTube, Potts here with Lucifer, and we are embarking on a new project which will run alongside our throwback videos, which I'm hoping to resume quite soon. And this project is going to go through the animated films in order, and also plug in a little bit of history there, put in some trivia for each of the films, and actually gives me an opportunity to make sure I've sort of seen all the really the core films and also some of the more obscure ones that they did. For example, during the wartime era, the propaganda pieces that I've never seen. It wasn't widely available when I was a kid. Now we got things like Disney Life, which gives us a huge. It's the Disney Netflix. So I thought that'd be quite interesting. And sort of plug in some trivia about the films, maybe some of the memories that I have of the films, and some of my thoughts on the ones that I've now will have seen. And I guess it also just gives you an opportunity to kind of see how things have changed over since Disney started. Because I've also now seen some of the early stuff, really early stuff he did, which is fascinating. Though I won't necessarily be watching all the films in order because then it would take me forever to go through all of it. But at least I think it will still help. And So I'm trying to be very clear about the kind of things that I'm including. So it's anything within produced by the Walt Disney Studios. So it does not include Pixar. They probably will get their own video because Pixar's story is more autonomous, and they still remain to this day. Any film that they've produced is still theirs, though distributed by Disney. So very much going to exclude that. And I will not include the Disney movie tunes, Walt Disney TV Animations, and in the Disney Toon Studios, who did all the Disney sequels. They did the Recess films, the Dougfest and Last Film. I'm so funny. And Tinkerbell movies, Bambi, Planes, etc. All of those things will not be included. Also, anything that they distributed, like Studio Ghibli, and I mean the list goes on. I mean, I didn't even know that they financed Romeo and Juliet, for example. I didn't know that Lucasfilms Animation had put out an animated film, Strange Magic. Apparently not very good. And then I won't include things like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, The New Lion King, because that was done by Fairview Entertainment as opposed to Walt Disney Studios. And then Skellington Productions, who did James and the Giant Peach and The Nightmare Before Christmas. Though, to be fair, I do actually want to rewatch the James and the Giant Peach because I haven't seen it in a very long time. I remember watching that in Norway years ago. And also Frankenweenie, who was done by Tim Burton Productions. And also, there's a Bollywood film. I didn't know they did that called Arjun Warrior Prince. And then, yeah, so these are the kind of things I won't be including, but you can already see that it's building up to a huge structure, which we already knew. But I have got, I found this amazing graphic by Title Max, and you can see the corporate structure. So let me show you that. So here we are. I'm actually using PowerPoint because I thought that makes things a little bit more interesting and will allow me to show you this wonderful graphic. Zooming in. Here you go in the middle. You can already see having to zoom in quite far, and there's just so much here. I mean, I'm zooming here, and they've got wonderful graphics of the castles, and you can see the various elements already. Here you got the corporate elements, the parks, theatrical groups, music groups, television groups. I mean, they're covering all of your media food groups as it was, and now zooming out, you can see there's so much here, and you have in the top left you have Marvel, top right 21st Century Fox, a new acquisition for them, and then you can drilling down into some of the more small things. You can see that there's ESPN in there, and if you may be able to just work out see that there's Photo Bucket there on the left of the center with GoPro to the right of that, and they're things I didn't know that they owned. So much going on here, and so much resources that they can then take from so many other places in order to keep costs down. And actually, one of the corporate departments there in the middle was actually a synergy department, a company for synergy. So in terms of its design. There's so much here. It's really fantastic. So that's the corporate structure. And now to go from, to rewind time, go back 101 years, back to when Walt was trying to fight actually World War One, though he wasn't able to due to the fact that he was too young at this point. He was able to join the Red Cross, so his first job was an ambulance driver, which I thought was quite interesting. So that was in 1918. In 1919, he moved back to Missouri, where his family lived, and he worked at Pesman Rubin Art Studio, and he was pursuing a career at that point of a newspaper artist. It was here he met a gentleman called Ub Iwerks, who is I think is quite an important figure. I think you'll agree if you haven't heard of him. The following year, Walt then worked at the Kansas City Film Company, which is in Missouri, again, not in Kansas, which I found a little bit confusing when I was researching this. Apparently, the suburbs of Kansas City, if you don't know the US geography, it sort of goes into Kansas, but Kansas City itself is in Missouri. Missouri is in the central part of America, as in the United States rather than Central America. So I should probably try not to create a skewed image of America, as in the North and South. But between Missouri and the West Coast and California, which is on the West Coast, there are 4 states in between. So there's quite a big difference between where he started and where he ended up. And so when he was working at the Kansas City Film Ad Company, he was helping produce commercials using cutout animation. And cutout animation is stop motion using props that are cut up into elements or paper. And the following year, he founded the Laugh-O-Grams Film Studio with Ub Iwerks, and then also had other animators, Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising, who were then involved as well. And one of their major projects was in 1923, Alice in Cartoonland, and they were all working on this. Though unfortunately, Laugh-O-Grams went under, and Walt had to file for bankruptcy in July 1923. He then moved to California, and however, as Alice in Cartoonland had been released, it actually became quite popular, and it was decided that they would distribute something they called the Alice Comedies, and a contract was signed in 16th of October 1923, which is the day that is said to be the day that Disney was created. And it was Walt and his brother Roy were equal partners of the Walt Disney Studios. They produced that for quite a few years until they then created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and then they were then working on animated shorts with Oswald. Now to go into some of the key players, you have, as I mentioned, Ub Iwerks. He worked with Disney from 1923 to 1929, and he created and designed Mickey Mouse as well as Oswald. Walt and Iwerks then fell out professionally and also personally. Ub then actually was contracted to run his own studios, which then failed to rival Disney. In 1937, Iwerks was then contracted to work on the Looney Tunes cartoons. However, it seems that Walt and Ub reconciled, as he returned to Disney in 1940. He then helped develop special effects, and then 18 years after he died in 1989, he was actually named a Disney legend, which I think is very fitting considering he helped create Mickey. Harman and Ising, they worked with Walt in Kansas City. They wanted to remain there to start their own venture, which flopped. And they then moved out to join Walt. So worked on the Alice Comedies and Oswald the Rabbit. Now, it was around about the time of 1927 when Walt learned a very valuable lesson. Because Universal retained the rights for Oswald, because in the contract, anything that was created by an employee was still owned by Universal. In a lot of contracts, if you do any particular work, for a company, and you will usually say within your contract that anything that you produce is there, not yours. So, also another reason why Walt severed ties with Universal, who he was in contract with, was because a gentleman named Charles Mintz was trying to essentially keep costs down and pay him less to work on the Oswald property. And yeah, so I think it was then when he realised that he wasn't able to take it with him to move elsewhere, because in the contract it was owned by Universal. So Harman and Ising actually stayed with Universal as they were contracted with Mintz to then work on Oswald. Though actually Mintz was actually left as Universal severed ties with him, and it was Walter Lantz who then produced the cartoon from 1923 to 1943. Going on to 2006, when Oswald was then actually bought back by Disney. I believe it was an exchange with another property that I'd never heard of, so I'm not going to try and remember what it was. But so anything then produced by then with Oswald now is Disney. But anything in that period between 1929 and 1943, which was produced by Walter Lantz, is still property to this day of Universal. So, in order to sort of move on from this, Walt altered the appearance of Oswald to make Mortimer Mouse. And I think we were all very glad that he did, because, what a great name for a very famous mouse. He went on to live a very short life because Lillian, Walt's wife, thought the name's a bit naff. And they changed it to Mickey Mouse, which I think we can all agree is much better than Mortimer. I think Mortimer sounds more like a mouse who works as an undertaker. Maybe that's something that they should do for a bit more dark humour. But anyway. So Mickey's first shorts, two shorts, were Plain Crazy and Gallopin' Gaucho, which I'm probably ruining the title of that. But these were two silent films. So I say these are the first. They were the first produced, but they were never formally released as silent films because no one would pick them up. Sound was revolutionising the stage at this point. The canvas stage? Screen. There we go. Silver screen. There we go. Bit of terminology from Pans there. Cheers. But we get to Steamboat Willie. Now everyone knows this one. It's the start of the Walt Disney Animation Studios little thing at the beginning of the films, and this was the first one with sound, first to be released, and the silence was broken. We now get to the pre-Golden Age and the start of Mickey's reign, and so now we are in 1928. So last year was his 90th birthday, and he then hit the stage, and him and Minnie, started their life together. And then after Steamboat Willie, you have the Gallopin' Gaucho was then released with sound. You had the Barn Dance, and then Plain Crazy follows soon after. We then move on to the 1930s, where the first of the Silly Symphonies was then produced, Flowers and Trees. This used a Technicolor process, which, when I've been looking into what it actually is, I sort of think it's similar to how a color printer cartridge works, that it uses 6 colors to generate all the colors, when you're printing color. So you've got, I actually saw, an image of it, and it was like six colors. You had red, blue and green, cyan, yellow and magenta, and so they're all used in order to create the color we see on screen. Now I've never really seen the Silly Symphonies. Pans has this really nice pin, which I really should have probably grabbed beforehand, but I forgot about that, and that is really, really pretty. And so I thought it was time I look at them to see part of the Disney legacy. I have also watched a little bit of the Laugh-O-Grams and Alice comedies, which are all right, and you can definitely see that they were really good for their time. But yeah, take them or leave them. Flowers and Trees, however, was wonderful, and it won an Academy Award, which I completely understand because it's incredibly innovative. Technicolor is a the process that is used. It was used back as early as the really early 1900s. A lot of people will associate it with the Wizard of Oz because of the striking differences with the opening and when Dorothy gets to Oz. When I actually watched it, I did really enjoy it. I found myself feeling quite sorry for the bad tree at the start when he's trying to wake up and really struggling because that's me in the morning. Though bats don't fly out my mouth. Do bats fly out my mouth? No, thankfully not. No bats. No bats, definitely. But then, so it was the Silly Symphonies was kind of an experiment to see how far they can push things. They can build up to their full length feature films, and I did really enjoy it. I did think the mushrooms in that film were also really strange, but I can definitely see why it won so many awards. And it was the first animated short to actually receive an Academy Award, and he went on to make 75 of the Silly Symphonies over the next few years. The next one after that, there was The Three Little Pigs in 1933. This one I wasn't. This won an award, so I was thinking, not sure I'm gonna like it, but I thought it was also really, really good. I thought it was even better than Flower and Trees. It was quite dark, and I did enjoy it. I mean, you see it in the parades in Disneyland Paris. You can see the Three Little Pigs, so I guess it makes sense that it's got to be something worth including because it was really, really good. The Tortoise and the Hare is the next one. 1935, also received an Academy Award, getting a bit of a pattern here. And I couldn't help but feel a little bit because the hare at one point is showing off his talent. He can play tennis and then run to the other side and then serve back. And yeah, I did feel a little bit sorry for him, but I think it's a lot of training because he doesn't have many friends. Three Orphan Kitties did make, which is one that also came out in 1935, and it did make me think of Tom and Jerry, which actually came out 5 years later by MCM. And there were some dubious things in this. I mean, you see in, for example, Tom and Jerry that there is a maid who works there, and they had that there. They had a woman's legs walking around the place, and there was also a doll which I believe is making a racist comment. It's the kind of thing that wasn't necessarily racist then, but looking about it now, it definitely was. So it was a bit dubious there. But product of its time. There was an introduction made for this when they released it in the noughties, and they said that they've kept it intact because, it's to show that the attitudes have changed over time, which I think is a fair point. But then again, is they ever going to release a Song of the South? Which will not be included in these lists anyway because it's not animated. Mostly not animated anyway. Now the next one in 1936, The Country Cousin. I love this one. I thought this one was wonderful. I laughed out loud. It's really funny. One of the country mouse gets drunk when he's visited. Well, he comes to the town and then goes out. Again, very, very reminiscent of Tom and Jerry. And there was even a chase with a cat. Though the town mouse is quite brutish. Oh, it's quite funny. The Old Mill is one that was produced a year later in 1937, towards the end of the pre-Golden Age period. And whilst this is not my favourite, there is a storm scene in it, which was quite ironic because when I was watching it, we were in the middle of a storm. And it made me think of the storm in Bambi. And also the storm in the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I mean, you look at the animation of the storm, and it's fantastic. They really did really well. So I think just having watched all these silly symphonies, I don't really think of them as silly anymore. I just think that they're fantastic. Absolutely a work of art. And you can see so many of the elements that he brings in the later feature lengths. Yeah, absolutely loved it. And I believe they were actually released all as a film called the Academy Award shorts or something like that. Now, so of course Mickey and also Minnie were introduced in 1928 in Steamboat Willie, and before the pre-Golden Age period was over, there were so many other characters they'd included. You have Pete, Clarabelle Cow, and Horace Horsecollar, which were introduced in 1929, Pluto in 1930, Goofy in 1932, Donald Fauntleroy Duck in 1934, and Huey, Dewey, and Louie were introduced in 1937. There is this quote I found from the Disney A to Z by Dave Smith. Note that the brightest hue of the three is red, so Huey. The colours of the water, dew, is blue, so Dewey. And that leaves Louie, and leaves are green. So, and also, it's interesting, when I was mentioning those 6 colours, the 3 colours at the top are red, blue, and green. Is that a comment on the colours being in that order due to Technicolor, or is it a complete coincidence? I mean, who knows? And then Daisy Duck was then introduced in 1937. So that is the end of the pre-Golden Age. Most of the players are there, and they were ready to get on to the new Golden Age. The Golden Age period. Though the actual start of that did happen during the pre-Golden Age, when it was actually announced that they were going to be doing it internally in 1934 to produce the first feature-length film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So that is the first video. So that covers the 2 of the the eras. The subsequent eras probably will be 1 per video. I'll try not to waffle off too much. Try to keep it succinct as I can, but I think there's going to be quite a lot of content, so it's going to be a learning experience for all of us. So I hope you enjoyed this introduction. I'm going to try to aim to get the next one out within the next 2 weeks. I'm going to try to have a 2-week period between each of these videos, and then so we'll see how it goes. Probably will be more when, especially in the wartime one, when there is a lot that I need to cover, and I'm not even sure the duration of those films. Probably not quite, they're not that long. They're not Bed Knobs and Broomsticks long. They'll probably still take a little bit of time. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. Please like if you do, or if you don't like, then there's a button especially for you as well. But please leave a comment, and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye.